Some of my memories get all blurry, but that day will be with me forever. It was hot that day and we weren't used to it. Mom had taken us to one of my favorite places, the zoo. I always loved watching the animals there, especially the meerkats. I would always find them hilarious. The way they would stand on top of their little dirt mounds, like they were little lookout guards. My brother would always be giggling in his pram as Mom showed him around. We spent the whole day exploring that place. I was having so much fun, but it was so hot that day, and by the end we were all very tired. Mom was so tired from pushing my little brother in the pram all day. We eventually decided to go back home. Mom didn't have a car, so we got a train from near where we lived and got off at the station near the zoo. The walk to the zoo was fine, but the walk back was so long. The heat was just never ending. As we waited on the station platform, I could see how tired Mom was. She was swaying from side to side and looked like she was barely hanging on. I could see her eyes slowly starting to close like she was about to go to sleep. I remember hearing the train coming and people starting to get up from their seats. It all happened like it was slow motion. I still remember seeing the pram slowly rolling off the side of the platform onto the tracks. I remember the gasps and shouts from people on the platform. I remember the cries of my baby brother before the train hit. What I remember most is the sound of Mom screaming. I'll remember it forever. I didn't know a person could make a sound like that. It reminded me of one of the animal screeches from the zoo. That sound still makes my whole body shiver when I think about it. It's hard to remember the rest. Things get blurry. I remember people shouting, people holding my mother as she cried. I remember ambulances and police cars. I remember people in green clothes leading me away from Mom. I remember crying. Why were they taking me away from Mom? The only person I have that cared for me. Eventually I was taken away in a car and things get too blurry after that. It was a while later, but a policeman eventually came to visit me. He told me that Mom was at the hospital, that she was sick from something he called sunstroke, and that's why she had been so tired. It's been a long time since that day. I'm older now, living in a foster home. I hate it here, and the other kids don't talk to me much. Mom was the only family I had. Dad died a long time ago. I don't have anyone else. Mom never got better after that day. I never saw her much, but sometimes the people at the foster home let me visit the hospital she stayed at. I tried talking to her, but Mom kept crying every time I spoke. She would always cry and wouldn't look at me. I don't understand. I thought she would be happy to see me again. I thought we could go back to the good times, but we never did. Mom's gone now. I was told she passed away in hospital. I don't like to think about it much. I'm alone now and I don't know what to do. Dad passed away before I was old enough to know him. We were alone, but not really. We had each other. Eventually things got better and for a while everything was great. Mom was happy and smiling again. She always made lots of time for me. We played games, went to the zoo and parks. It was great. We were happy. It didn't last though, and soon Mom started seeing someone, a man. I always hated that man. He took Mom away from me. She was so happy before, but now she wouldn't talk to me. We stopped playing games and never went anywhere fun. The man was always loud and angry and Mom was always sad. She cried a lot. Even when the man left, she cried. I thought that now he was gone, things would go back to the way things were. But then he came. Mom Saturday me down one day. I thought we were going to do something fun. Go to the zoo or a park maybe. Then she told me that I was going to be a big brother. I was confused. I thought it was going to be just us again. Like before, when we were happy. Mom was never happy again. Not like before. Not like the old times. Mom was always tired. And we never did anything fun anymore. Mom would always be with that thing. My baby brother. Never made time for me. Never did anything fun. Mom was always tired. Always sad. While my brother always cried. He ruined everything. We were happy. Mom was happy until it arrived. I thought I could fix it. I thought I could make Mom smile again. And as she closed her eyes at the train platform, I pushed. I've always been a person that has weird things happen to them. It's not a matter of if something is going to happen, it's when. Because of this, I've become pretty aloof when it comes to interacting with the world, maintaining a it is what it is mentality. However, I feel like I was justified in being freaked out about this incident in particular. Not a lot actually scares me, but this is one of the few things that did. The setting was a typical scary story setting, 1130-ish at night, pitch dark outside, hardly anyone on the roads. I was freshly 18 and driving, on my way back from a 6-hour shift at work, and had pulled into a 24-hour fast food drive-thru. I live out of town, and I knew I'd be too tired to make myself something once I got home. Plus, I was starving. Nothing out of the ordinary happened while I was getting my food. There was nobody else around, and me and the drive-through worker seemed to be the only ones currently awake. What I assumed was his car was the only one in the parking lot, and it was parked close to the employee exit entrance, which is almost right next to the exit of the drive-through. I get my food, bid the guy a good night, then pull into the nearest parking spot fresh out of the drive-through, which is literally right in front of it, though there's enough space between it and the exit for a car to get by. I parked the car and began setting myself up for the drive home, unwrapping my wrap and putting my straw in my drink, the usual. Out of the corner of my eye, I see the headlights of a vehicle pull into the parking lot from the farthest entrance. The fast food restaurant shares a parking lot with a vacant building that used to be a Sears, and people are free to use that entrance as well. I pay it no mind, figuring someone else had the same idea as me, and go back to setting myself up. For a solid minute, I'm getting myself situated before I suddenly get the feeling that I'm not alone. I look up in time to see the same vehicle pull up right next to my car, literally the next parking space over. Mind you, the parking lot is completely empty. They could have parked anywhere else, yet they chose to pull up right next to my tiny little car, which felt more like an insect compared to the massive black truck they were in. In this moment, I jump into defensive mode and immediately start taking note of everything I can see about this truck. It's completely black. The back windows are tinted, but there's enough lighting that I can see the silhouettes of 2, maybe 3 passengers in the back seat. In the front seat is the driver, who is obscured by the darkness, and the passenger, whose door is almost snug up against my driver's door. He's tall and lanky, wearing a baseball hat and a face mask, one of the black paper ones, and has a hoodie on with the hood pulled up over his head and hat. For a few moments, I just sit there, staring, and the passenger of the truck is looking at me. I can feel it, and I'm majorly creeped and uncomfortable, yet frouncing in place. The truck has pulled into park. I could hear the gear change, and saw the driver move accordingly. Me and the passenger just stared at one another through our windows. My brain was screaming at me to move, but I couldn't, my hands still in the process of unwrapping my food. I wasn't a pretty sight. My hair was slicked back with sweat into a ponytail. My shift had absolutely wiped the floor with me, and anyone could tell just by looking at me. And I was wearing my glasses that I use when I drive, nearsighted issues and astigmatism. The longer we Saturday there, the louder my brain kept screaming at me to move, to do something other than sit there and stare at this guy. I've been in enough situations where I know that my fear response, unfortunately, is to freeze, and that was exactly what I had done. That was until the passenger moved. Within a few seconds, a lot happened. The passenger moved and opened his door and began the process of getting out. My body finally kicked into gear right as I heard my brain audibly tell me, "Nope, go." And I listened. I yanked the car into drive and sped out of there, one hand still holding my wrap, the other gripping the steering wheel and swerving to get the fuck out of there. As I exited the parking lot, I looked back through the window and saw the passenger getting back into the truck. I didn't look long enough to see if they'd left or not, considering there was a traffic light coming up, but I'm assuming they did. I probably broke multiple speeding laws getting the hell out of there, but I didn't care. I immediately messaged my friend and told her what happened. I knew she'd be asleep, and then called my boyfriend at the time, who'd been waiting up for me so we could talk once I got off work. He picked up, and I told him what happened. He could tell I was serious because of the tone of my voice, and he asked if I was okay. I stayed on the phone with him the entire way back to my house, and kept looking over my shoulder, suspicious of any headlights that might be following me. Thankfully, once I got off the highway and onto the back roads towards my house, I live on a farm, nobody was following me. I bid my boyfriend good night once I turned off the car, got inside and ate my food, and immediately went to bed, too tired to stress over the situation any more than I already had. When I told my mom about it in the morning, she just said, "Yeah, he was trying to talk to you," which, well, duh. She wasn't very sympathetic to my stress, for whatever reason, so I just brushed it off and continued with my day, and then my life. However, my friend that I had messaged the previous night freaked out enough for me and my mother, and she called me the second she woke up and saw my message to make sure I was okay. Even now, months later, she still mentions it whenever the topic comes up, and honestly, I'm grateful she cares as much as she does. My mom's reaction made me feel like I was overreacting, even though logically I knew I wasn't. Freeze is still my automatic fear response, and I'm doing everything I can to fix it. I'd rather not be put in that position again. It was supposed to be a routine business trip for my father and brother, They boarded Flight 237 with every intention of returning home in a few days. I remember standing at the airport, waving goodbye to them, completely unaware that it would be the last time I'd see them. Flight 237 vanished without a trace. No wreckage was found, no distress signals sent. It was as if the plane had been swallowed by the sky. The search went on for months, and then years. But hope faded into sorrow, and sorrow turned into a gnawing emptiness that never left. Our family tried to move on, but the shadow of that lost flight hung over us like a curse. My mother never stopped looking at the sky, as if she expected to see them walking back down the driveway one day. I grew up haunted by the mystery, the unanswered questions. What happened to them? Did they suffer? Did they cry out for help that never came? 20 years passed, and I built a life for myself far from the painful memories. I avoided flying whenever possible, but some things can't be escaped. My job required me to take a flight to a distant city, and after much hesitation, I booked the ticket. I felt a chill as I boarded, a sense of impending doom that I couldn't shake. The plane took off without incident, and I tried to relax. But an hour into the flight, the cabin lights flickered, the hum of the engines faltered, and the plane was suddenly plunged into darkness. The emergency lights glowed an eerie red, casting long shadows down the aisle. I felt the plane start to descend, not in a smooth glide, but in a sickening drop. Panic erupted. I fumbled for my seatbelt, my heart pounding. That's when I saw them, my father and brother, sitting in the row across from me, staring straight ahead with vacant eyes. They looked exactly as they had 20 years ago, untouched by time. The other passengers, they were all the same people who had been on Flight 237. Faces I had seen in the news, in the endless memorials and vigils. They were all here, with me, on this doomed flight. I blinked, trying to dispel the vision, but it remained. The air grew colder, and I could see my breath misting in front of me. I tried to call out to them, but my voice was swallowed by the oppressive silence. My father turned his head slowly, his eyes locking onto mine. They were empty, hollow, like windows into an endless void. My brother's hand reached out, skeletal and trembling. "Why didn't you save us?" His voice was a whisper, barely audible over the growing roar of the wind outside. I couldn't, I stammered, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know how. The plane continued its uncontrolled descent. The other passengers began to move, their motions jerky and unnatural, like puppets on strings. They all turned to face me, their eyes accusing, mouths opening in silent screams. I was paralyzed with terror, unable to move, unable to look away. The temperature dropped further, frost creeping up the windows. The red emergency lights flickered again, casting grotesque shadows that twisted and writhed like living things. The overhead compartments began to open and close on their own, the sound echoing through the cabin like a series of gunshots. The seats around me started to shake violently, as if something was trying to break free from within. I could hear a low, guttural moan rising from the depths of the plane, a sound that seemed to vibrate through my bones. The passengers, my father and brother included, started to chant in unison, a language I couldn't understand. Their voices merged into a haunting, otherworldly dirge that filled the air with a sense of dread. I clutched my seat, knuckles white, as the plane plummeted faster. The windows shattered, letting in a howling wind that tore through the cabin. Papers and debris flew around in a chaotic whirlwind. My father leaned closer, his face inches from mine. "Join us," he whispered, his breath icy on my skin. I screamed, closing my eyes, wishing it all to end. The plane shook violently, and I could feel it breaking apart. My body was thrown against the seat, and then everything went black. When I woke up, I was lying on a cold, hard surface. The air was thick and heavy, filled with the scent of decay. I struggled to sit up, my body aching. I was in a cavernous, dimly lit space, the remnants of the plane scattered around me. The passengers were there too, standing in a circle around a dark, pulsating mass at the center. My father and brother stood closest to it, their faces expressionless. The mass seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically, emitting a faint, eerie glow. I tried to stand, but my legs refused to cooperate. I crawled forward, compelled by an unseen force. As I neared the center, I could hear whispers, voices from the mass calling to me, beckoning me closer. I reached out, my hand trembling. The surface of the mass was cold and slick, like the skin of a serpent. It pulsated under my touch, and the whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Join us," they repeated, over and over. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, and I screamed as my vision blurred. The last thing I saw was my father and brother, their eyes now glowing with an unnatural light. their mouths twisted into grotesque smiles. I don't know how long I was unconscious. When I came to, I was back in my seat on the plane. The cabin was silent, the lights dim, the other passengers were gone, and the plane was steady, cruising at a normal altitude. I looked around, my heart racing. Was it all a dream? A hallucination? But then I saw it. My father's watch, lying on the seat next to me, still ticking, untouched by time. The plane landed without further incident, and I stumbled off, clutching the watch. No one else seemed to remember what had happened. The passengers and crew went about their business, oblivious. But I know the truth. Flight 237 never really vanished. Now when I look into the sky, I know out there somewhere, there is the lost airplane, and its passengers stuck in a forever limbo,